All right. All right. Thanks, Eileen. So welcome everybody to part 2 of PDF remediation standards, tools, and testing. A couple weeks ago, if you were able to participate in part 1, we covered technical standards and laws that apply to PDF document accessibility. We talked about some reasons for using PDFs for accessibility rather than Word documents in most cases. And I shared a variety of resources, including how to locate the free tools that I'm going to be demonstrating today. So if you missed part 1, I would encourage you to go back and watch that on Missouri Assistive Technology Program's YouTube channel. It's available there. For today's part 2, I'm going to be demonstrating the use of automated and manual testing tools and techniques. Automated demonstrations are going to include Adobe Acrobat's Accessibility Checker and PDF UA Foundation's PDF Accessibility Checker, which is also known as the PAC Checker. And I'm going to demonstrate a variety of manual checks, including checking color contrast with the assistance of TPGI's Color Contrast Analyzer, or CCA tool. So I'll walk you through these processes, show you how it works, and talk to you about reasons why we need to do some of the steps we do, why just automated testing isn't enough, why just using the checker in Adobe Acrobat Pro is not enough. I do want to remind everyone, like I mentioned last time, the overarching goal of these sessions and these demonstrations is to teach you a process for reviewing and for checking PDF documents to determine what needs to be remediated. You will see some demonstrations of remediation techniques during today's demonstrations, but that's not really the goal of this presentation. And in the resources that I presented last time, I've provided links to trainings that go much more in depth on a wide range of PDF remediation techniques. So to get started, I have my PDF document open. Now, this is a document that I created in Microsoft Word, and I exported it to Adobe Acrobat. Now, it's important to note that I did not use the print to PDF feature, because that usually exports an untagged PDF or creates an untagged PDF where you have to build all of the accessibility from scratch. So I use the export to PDF function in Word and not print to PDF. That is an important difference when we're addressing accessibility. All right. So the first thing we're going to do now that the PDF file is open is run an accessibility check using the checker that's built into Acrobat Pro. Now, if you have not used this before, you'll need to go to Tools, and then under Protect and Standardize, one of the tools that's available is Accessibility. And if you click Add, the accessibility tool will show up on your right sidebar. So once that showed up on your right sidebar, you can click it to open it. We're going to select Accessibility Check. And if this is the first time you've set this up and run an accessibility check, Create Accessibility Report will be checked by default. You do not need to have an accessibility report created for the purposes we're demonstrating today. So you can go ahead and uncheck that, and then come down to the bottom and click the Start Checking button. When we click the Start Checking button, an accessibility pane will open on the left-hand side. It says Accessibility Checker, and it tells us that our document has 3 issues. We also have an alternative text issue. So I'll click on the carets to expand and display more information about the specific issues that Acrobat Pro is identifying. I'll also widen this pane so it's easier to read all of the information here. So we have a couple of issues identified in red. It says that title has failed. It also says under alternate text that we have figures that have failed the alternate text requirement, figure 1 and figure 2. And then we have a couple of question marks where it says logical reading order needs manual check and color contrast needs manual check. Now, we're actually going to start this process by manually checking color contrast with the assistance of the Color Contrast Analyzer, or CCA tool. The reason we're doing this first is because if we identify areas of insufficient color contrast, to fix that correctly, we're going to have to go back to the original Word document to fix that. If we fix it in Acrobat, there is a way to do that, but if we fix it in Acrobat, it's going to cause other problems and we're not going to end up with an accessible PDF. And so if we start doing other fixes before we get to color contrast, and then we have to go back to Word to fix a color contrast issue we've identified, we're then going to have to redo all of the fixes that we've done in Acrobat after we re-export that document from Word. So I want to emphasize it's important to start with color contrast. So I'm going to bring up my Color Contrast Analyzer tool. This is a free tool. Here, toward the top, we have a foreground color. Now we can type in a color. We can click and type in a hexadecimal code, or we can select the drop-down on the left and change it to RGB. If we know the RGB code, we can type that in manually. But in many cases, we won't know these codes to type them in, or it'll be too much trouble to look them up. And so we have a handy eyedropper tool that we can use. And I'll show how to do that in just a minute. We also have the background color, which is already on white. And our document's background is white, so we'll just leave that. So for foreground color, which is the color of our font, our text, I'm going to select the eyedropper tool. And then on the, actually, I'm not going to select the eyedropper tool yet because I need to scroll down in my PDF document. Now on the first page, all of my text is black on the white background, so we know the color contrast is fine. On the second page, my name and my title are in sort of a medium light blue. So let's check that. I'm going to select the eyedropper tool, come down, and it creates a magnifying glass that selects a single pixel. Now, when fonts are rendered, not all of the pixels are the same color. The edges will be lighter colors, as you can see in the magnifying glass, which creates a smoother edge effect visually. But you want to select the single pixel in the center of the magnifying glass that is the darkest color used in that font. And when I click on that, it displays the color and the code over here in foreground color. And then further down, it has my WCAG 2.1 results. It says that my contrast ratio is 3.4 to 1. And it compares that to the different WCAG standards. So the minimum contrast requirement at the AA level, which Missouri state agencies are required to adhere to, for regular text, it fails the contrast requirement. Now, there is a green check mark here. It says pass large text. And if I click on this caret, it will explain, it paraphrases the WCAG standard. Basically, For large scale text, which is considered 18-point text, or text that is both bold and at least 14-point, a contrast ratio of 3:1 is acceptable. But for text that is not large scale, the required contrast ratio is a minimum of 4.5:1. And it's important to note that you cannot get to that standard by rounding up. And so if your color contrast tests at 4.49:1, you can't just round that to 4.5:1 and say that's fine. It actually has to be 4.5:1 or higher without rounding. So in this case, because the font is 12-point, we have not met the contrast requirement. Now, what Acrobat will allow us to do is come over to our sidebar, click Edit PDF. We can then take our cursor and highlight the text that does not have the correct color contrast. And then we can come over to the right to Format and change the font color. But if we change that font color and fix this in Acrobat, it's going to mess up tagging and other properties that are going to cause accessibility errors. And so unfortunately, what we need to do is go back to that original Word document and change the font color in the Word document. Now, what you can do even before you get to this point, if you're developing that Word document yourself, is use the color contrast analyzer in Word before you even export to PDF, and that can save you some steps. But if you're receiving the PDF document from someone else who created it, then you might need to start at this point. So I'm going to jump to another PDF document where I've already gone back to Word and fixed this. I'll bring up the color contrast analyzer tool again, select the eyedropper, come down, select a pixel that is the darkest color of the font. And now you can see the color contrast ratio is 9.1:1. And so this passes for regular text as well as large text. At this contrast ratio, it even passes the AAA standard for regular text or for large text, which is an enhanced voluntary best practice. Now, my other text in this document that's not black on white is the hyperlinks down here. So I will check that as well. I'm going to select the eyedropper tool again. And again, select a pixel that's the darkest color. And here we see the contrast ratio is 8.6:1. So this is all good. At this point, we have corrected all of the color contrast. We've done our manual checks, and we know that color contrast does meet the standards. What we can do now is come back over to our accessibility checker panel on the left, and where it says color contrast needs manual check, I'm going to right click and tell Acrobat that color contrast has passed the manual check. The next thing we're going to work on is title. So our accessibility checker says that the title has failed. Now, to see what's going on with the title, we're going to come up to File. So click on File, and then Properties. And then a dialog is going to open with Document Properties on the Description tab. And here you can see my document does have a title. So it's not failing this because the title is missing. I've also followed best practices and entered an author and keyword and subject words here to identify subject of the document. Keywords can also be entered. All of this can be done in Word before the file is exported to PDF format. So I do have the title. The reason it's failing the check is under the Initial View tab. So I'm going to click on Initial View, and then under Window Options, it says Show, and there's a drop-down dialog with file name selected. Now, if you look in the title bar of the window, it's displaying the file name. And when screen readers are reading the document, they will read what is displayed up here. And what it should read is not the file name, but the document title. So we need to click on the drop down and select document title. Click OK to close the dialog and accept the change. And now you notice that at the top of the window, what's displayed is now the title instead of the file name. So I can come back to the accessibility checker, right click on title failed, click check again, and now it tells me that title is passed. So I have one more thing fixed. All right. The accessibility checker is also telling me that I have these two figures that need alt text. So I'm going to click on figure 1, and Acrobat will show me where this figure is in the document. So it's highlighted my logo and header at the top of the document. If I click on figure 2, it's going to take me to figure 2. This is a little bit harder to spot, but I actually have a decorative line that I'm using to separate text on the second page here. And so that's figure 2, and it's telling me that that figure does not have alt text. I'm going to click on, so I'm going to right click on figures, alternate text failed, and click fix. It's going to bring up a dialog where I can enter alt text. So here, the figure is the Missouri Department of Mental Health logo, so I'm going to enter alt text for that. And then I'm going to click the right arrow to advance to the second image or the second figure. Now, this is just that decorative line that's breaking up two sections on the second page. So this is really decorative. It's not required to have alt text because it's not conveying information. So I'm going to click on decorative figure instead of entering alt text and click save and close. As soon as I do that, you'll notice the accessibility checker shows that that alt text has now passed. Now, the remaining issue that the accessibility checker identifies is that logical reading order needs a manual check. So to check on logical reading order, I'm going to move to the left bar here where we have this series of icons coming down, and there's one that looks like a Z over 4 squares. This is the order pane. So I'm going to click on the order pane, and I'm actually going to scroll back to the first page. Now you'll see when I have the order pane open, the PDF document is overlaid with boxes that contain the contents of the document, and it displays the reading order. Number 1 is my logo at the top, and then 2 is my first paragraph, 3, 4, and so on. And as I scroll down, you'll see I have a page number at the bottom of the page that is not included in the reading order. On the second page, I have the same issue. And actually, this is a little bit difficult to notice, but at the header of my document, I actually have not just the logo, but I have the heading Office of Deaf Services, ADA Title II and ACA Section 1557 Compliance in DD Services. This is actually the first heading in my document, and Acrobat has not correctly identified this as separate from my logo. So I need to tell Acrobat to include this as a separate item in the reading order. So I'm going to come over to the right and click on reading order to open a reading order dialog box. I'm going to bring it over to the right so I can see what I'm doing better. Now, when I place my mouse over the document, it displays crosshairs. I'm going to click and drag, and it's going to create a box around certain content. So I want to place that box completely around the text content that I want to make sure is correctly showing in my reading order. And now it's selected. This is my first heading in the document. It's my level 1 heading. And so in the reading order dialog, I'm going to click on heading 1, which places that text in a heading level 1 tag. And now you can see it shows as a separate object in the reading order from the logo. So the logo is 1, my heading is 2 in the reading order, and so on. Now I'm also going to come down, grab the page numbers in the same way, only I'm going to take those as text/paragraph. I'm going to repeat the process with the page 2 page number, text paragraph. Now, if you notice here, it's actually placed the page number as first on the reading order on that page. Now, if I were adding content that was within the body of the page and I had a 1 down at the bottom, that's not what I would want. The reading order can be reordered by dragging and dropping within the order pane on the left here, but if you do that, it will create errors in your tag structure, and so you don't want to do it that way. What you would want to do is find the tags icon on the left, click on that, and that will bring up the tags pane, which shows our tag structure. And then within the tags pane, you can select content and drag and reorder it. That will preserve the correct tags while also reordering the reading order to what you want. So if you need to drag and move content in the reading order, make sure you do it from the tags pane and not from the reading order pane. So I'm going to go ahead and come back up to page 1. I've tagged the content that was missing from the reading order. And the next thing that I need to do is artifact things that I do not want to be read as part of the body of the document. And so our page number here, for people who are using screen readers, they're not looking at an actual page on a screen, and so that doesn't matter to them. They don't really need to have the screen reader reading through the content and interrupt the flow of that content by saying 1, and then it starts reading the next page, and then it finishes that page and says 2, and so on. So the correct way to do this, if the document has page numbers are optional, footers are optional, but if you have page numbers, then they are required to be tagged correctly. So we're going to artifact the page numbers as pagination artifacts. So the screen reader knows this is separate from the body content. This goes in the footer, and it's pagination, so that is available if the person using the screen reader wants to access it, but it doesn't automatically get read and disrupt the flow of the content. I'm going to take the cursor and select it. Then on the left, under tags, there's a little drop down. I'm going to click on that and click Find Tag from Selection. Now that locates that content for me in the tag tree. See, we have a paragraph tag here, and then there's a content box within that paragraph tag. So by default, that tag is collapsed, but when I go to that content, or if I click on the caret to expand it, I can see that content box within the paragraph tag. I'm going to right click on the content box and select Change Tag to Artifact. When this dialog comes up, it says pagination, which is what I want, so I'm going to click OK. I'm going to move to the second page, select 2, go back to the tags pane, select Find Tag from Selection, do the same process, right click on the content box, change page to artifact, pagination artifact. And then I also have my line here. So I'm going to locate that line in my tag tree. And this one, unfortunately, cannot be selected with the cursor. So you may need to find it manually. It's considered a path. So I'm going to right click on that content box, change tag to artifact. And this one is a layout artifact. It would be okay to leave it on page. It's not going to hurt anything, but technically it's a layout artifact. I'm going to click OK. Now at this point, I have 3 empty tags because I've artifacted the content that was in those tags. And we should not have any empty tags. So I'm going to come up to tags at the top of the tags tree, select that, right click, and then make sure you don't select delete tag, but instead select delete empty tags. And all 3 of those empty tags will disappear. All right, so at this point, if I were actually going through a remediation instead of doing a demonstration, I would save my progress. So I'm going to move on to another PDF document as though I've saved my progress. Now in our accessibility checker on the left here, this is what it looks like. This is what it looked like the last time we checked it. So we've gone through logical reading order, and we can now right click on that and manually pass that. So at this point, we have corrected everything that the accessibility checker in Acrobat has identified. And so we're going to move on to our next check, our next step in the process. I'm going to bring up the pack checker. Now, within the pack checker, there are a variety of pieces. There's a large button toward the upper left. If you click on that, you select the file. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this and select the file I'm working on. Now, if you notice, there's a tab for PDF UA, which is the PDF Universal Accessibility standard that we discussed last time. There's also a tab for the WCAG standard, which is the one that state agencies are required to meet. Now, you'll notice when I click on the WCAG tab, it does identify a couple of issues, not as many as under PDF UA, but it is identifying a couple things. Now I'm going to click on results in detail to get more information. This will bring up a dialog. By default, it has PDF UA expanded. I'm going to collapse that and open WCAG instead. Now under perceivable, if I drill down, it's going to tell me I have an issue with text alternatives, non-text content, alternative description for annotations, and it says that I'm missing alternative descriptions for annotations. So if I click on this, it's going to show me where in the document I have this issue. So 1, 2, 3, 4 issues it's identified. These are my hyperlinks on the second page. It's telling me that I need to add an alternative description for these. So to correct that, I'm going to go back to my PDF document. I'm going to scroll down to these hyperlinks, and I'm going to carefully position my mouse so that the cursor appears and select it. And I'm going to come back over to my tags pane and select find tag from selection. This locates the object content that is the link. So I'm going to right click on that, select properties, and this is going to open up an object properties dialog. One of the fields here is alternate text. And so I'm going to type in alternate text. I'm entering alternate text that says email director of deaf services. So a screen reader can identify the purpose of this link. Because when people use screen readers, they may navigate through the document line by line and come to this and understand, from the text above it leading up to it, that this is the email address for the director of deaf services. But there are also shortcuts that they can take to navigate through documents. One of those methods is with a link list, in which case they would get to these links. The screen reader would just read the link, but they wouldn't know why it's there, why they might want to use that link. And so adding this annotation tells them, when they're navigating by link list, oh, this is what they would click on if they want to email the director of deaf services. And so I would proceed to add those alt text annotations to the other links here. I'm not going to demonstrate doing that 4 times for the sake of time. The next thing that needs to be fixed, if I go back to the pack checker, is that there's a warning under robust. And if I drill down, it tells me that there's a possible issue with the section structure element. It says the section structure element is used as a root element, which is something that is not really correct tag structure. It's not something that the pack checker can tell for sure whether it's okay or whether it's an accessibility error. But in this case, it is something we should fix. And so what we're going to do is go back to our tag tree. We're going to select our root tag, which is the first tag in the document, which is below tags here. It's an SECT tag, which is a section tag. Now I'm going to right click on that, select properties, and then in this object properties dialog for type, there's a drop down. It's already on section. I'm going to open that and I'm going to scroll up to document. So anytime my content is a document, my root tag should be a document tag. I've selected that and closed it. And now you see, instead of a section tag, we have a document tag for our root tag. So at this point, again, I would be saving my document. So I'll move on to the next section of my demonstration here. I'm going to open the document that is the next step, like I had saved the one I was working on. Now here, we see that the document meets all WCAG requirements that are part of the automated testing. So we're making good progress, but we're not quite there yet. If we come down toward the bottom left, we can click on Screen Reader Preview. Now this shows a visual representation of how the document appears to screen reader software. You can see at the top, it displays the logo and the alt text Missouri Department of Mental Health logo, followed by our level 1 heading. We then have a paragraph, and then our next piece of content is also an H1 or level 1 heading, but each document should only have one H1 or level 1 heading. So we have an issue here. Our headings are not structured correctly because we have more than one level 1 heading. If we keep going down, we have a list here, and we'll see that on the left, there's this blue section that shows we have content within a link tag, or a list tag rather, which is what we want. We want the list to be in a list tag, but then there's another list tag in the list tag. So this is superfluous. We don't want another list tag there. And then each item in the list is within an LI or list item tag. You can see we have 6 list items. That is what we want. But then within each list item, we should have a tag for the bullet, and which is a label tag. We should have a bullet in a label tag, and we should have the actual content of the list item in a list body or L body tag. So as you can see here, we just have the L body tag. So that's not correct either. So I'm going to close this preview, or the screen reader preview, go back to Acrobat, and then we're going to open our tags panel again. Now we can do what's called walking the tag tree, where I click on the first tag in my document, and all of the content within the document is within that tag tree, unless it's been artifacted. So everything within that tag gets highlighted and an overlay in the document. I can use the down arrow key to walk down to my figure tag. I can use the right arrow to expand that and see the content within the tag. I can move back, I can move up and down within that expansion. I can press the left arrow to collapse the tag. So I'm going to move down to my heading level 1. This is the correct level 1 heading for my document, so I'm going to leave that. I'm going to move down. The next tag is paragraph. That is a paragraph. Now, my next tag is a level 1 heading that we saw in the screen reader preview. Should actually not be a level 1 heading. So I'm going to right click on this, select properties, And within the dialog, I can change from a heading level 1 tag to a heading level 2 tag. Click close, and then it's changed the tag over here in the tag tree. Another way to do this that is simpler and faster for short tags, if I move down, really for each of these tags, I'm going to need to add one level so that the level 2 tags become heading level 3 tags. So I'm going to right click. I'm sorry, not right click. I'm just going to click on it again, and that's going to allow me to manually edit the tag. I can delete the 2, change it to a 3, and then I can either press enter or just click out of it onto another tag. So I'd keep going through and changing my heading level tags to get to the level I want to correct all of the heading level tags. Now to fix the list tags, the structure for the list tags, I'm actually going to go to the last list in the document to demonstrate this because it's the shortest. Here I just have 3 list items, and because the bullets are missing from a label tag, I'm going to go to the order pane, click on accessibility again to open the options on the right, and clicked on reading order to open my reading order dialog again. Now I'm going to use my mouse cursor to select just the bullet, and then click text paragraph to create a separate tag for that. Now when I do this, this is pulling the bullet out of the list body item tag and giving it its own separate tag, which is what I want. But I want the bullets in a label tag, and that is not an option in the reading order dialog, so I have to select something else for now. Text paragraph is the simplest. So I'm going to close the reading order dialog, and then over on the left, go back to my tag tree. I can use my mouse again, the cursor, to select the bullet, and then within the tags pane, go to find tag from selection. This locates the first bullet for me in the tag tree, and here you'll see it's in a P tag, the paragraph tag. So I'm going to right click on that tag, go to properties, and then for type, I can open the drop down and change the tag to a label. And this shows me that the tag is LBL. So I can then manually take that, select the next list item bullet. Actually, I'm going to have to expand that, select the paragraph tag, change the paragraph tag to LBL, repeat the process with the third bullet. Now, if you remember, when we looked at the screen reader preview, we had a list tag within a list tag. And if you'll see at the top of the expanded list part of the tag tree here, we have the first list tag and the second list tag. And when I click back and forth, there's no change in the content selected. So that's a good indicator that this is redundant. There's no reason to have a list tag within a list tag, but that's the way it exported from Word. So to correct this, we're going to take the lower list tag, click on it, and drag it up to position it under the H2 tag. This leaves our extra list tag down below empty, and you'll see that when we click on that, nothing is selected. When we click on the other list tag, list is selected. When we click on the heading tag above it, the heading is selected like we want. So, so we have the empty tag that we want to get rid of. And if I'm going through remediating this, I'm going to do this with all of my lists in this document. Once I'm done with that, each of those lists is going to have an empty list tag. I'm going to come back up to the top of the tag tree pane, expand options, delete empty tags again. And at this point, my my lists are all going to be tagged correctly. So at this point, again, I'd be saving, and I'll switch to a new document as though I had saved. I'll go back to Pack Checker. Now, in Pack Checker, if you have saved a PDF document that you're working on and you had already checked it in the PDF accessibility checker, you can come back over and click refresh, the circular arrows on the right side here. That'll refresh the scan of the document. But in this case, I'm actually opening a later version of the document in my remediation process. So I'm going to open that. And WCAG still looks good. It's passing all the WCAG automated checks. I'm going to go over to PDF UA. Now, again, PDF UA is a voluntary standard for those of us who are at state agencies. It is a little bit more stringent in some ways than WCAG. It's also specific to PDFs, whereas WCAG is generally designed for websites, and then WCAG takes those standards and applies them to PDF documents the way I discussed last week. So for this particular document, the only missing extra step we'd need to do to meet the PDF UA standard is metadata. If I click on results in detail, I can drill down and it tells me I have an issue with the PDF UA identifier. That PDF UA identifier is missing. So I'm going to go back to my PDF document. Now under Tools, under Protect and Standardize, there's an option for PDF standards. If you don't have this on your sidebar, you can add it to your sidebar. We can open PDF standards, and then we're going to select pre-flight. Now, unfortunately, there's some sort of a glitch with the Acrobat installation on the particular computer I'm using, which means I'm not able to demonstrate all of the rest of this process to you. Normally, the next step would be to click on the wrench icon in the pre-flight dialog box. Once I click on that, there would be a list of options in this area that's blank. I would select the option that says document info and metadata. When I click that, it would expand. I would select the option set PDF/UA1 entry. And then once I've selected that, I would click on the fix button down here. But because of this glitch, there aren't any options for me to select, and fix is grayed out. So once I did that, that would add the PDF UA identifier to the metadata, where as the document remediator, I'm saying I have verified that this document meets PDF UA standards. And so I'm affixing this to the metadata to verify that I've checked and this does in fact meet the PDF UA standards. So that is the remediation process. This is a pretty routine process that would be done on simple 1 to several page PDF documents with common types of content. Other types of content like like tables may need additional attention that's beyond the scope of today's presentation, but some of the trainings and resources that I pointed you to last week would cover how to do those types of things. So at this point, if I had actually been able to add that PDF UA identifier, I would then save my PDF document. The way I typically do it is to add text at the end of the file name, PDF-UA, so I know that this is a document, the final document output for accessibility purposes that's met that PDF UA standard. And then if I were to rescan that document in the pack checker, this metadata check would then pass, and I would be ready to share or publish that document that is fully accessible. All right, so that's the end of the demonstration for today. Any questions? All right, hearing none, I will turn it back over to you, Eileen.